Hello everyone, welcome back. In the last video, in the last story, I covered a Reddit thread about two friends and how the writer dared his friend to ruin his life. And I said in that video, I will cover the rest of it in the next video again. I don't know I will go over the full series because there are like 8 parts to this. And if I can squeeze at least parts 2 through 4, I'll be happy. And by the way, the last video I did covers the first part, and I will put up a timestamp here. So we will look at this thread as I played Dark Souls. But before we get into, if you like videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe, and links to the parts will be in the description along with the last video that covers the first part, which was the last story. And my Tik Tok will be linked to. That being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Part 2. Hello again, everyone. I've had more time to write than yesterday. Sorry about the length. I'm trying to catch up to present as quickly as possible, but also include enough detail so you can see how thorough David was being. I'll resume where I left off. While I was still trying to resolve the credit disputes with those companies, my car's windows started getting smashed. The first time, it was parked on the street in front of my apartment. I woke up one morning to find the driver's windows smashed and my car raided. My car was just a crappy Honda Civic, and I didn't ever keep anything expensive in there. But they snatched my stereo, which was shitty anyway, and all the spare change in the car. Desperate much? I got my window repaired that day and decided to set aside some cash to buy a really nice stereo now that I had an excuse. The next morning, the same window was smashed again. Again, I had parked it in front of my apartment. I got that repaired reluctantly and started to park in the underground parking for the apartment complex. See, no one likes the underground parking because the lines are painted too close, so it's not uncommon for your car to get scratched up down there. I decided it was better than a smashed window, so I fought for a spot that evening. I know you're going to ask why I didn't call the police. Mistakes, that's why. We all make them. You have the wisdom that comes with knowing the whole story. I didn't. Glass was all over around my car when I went down the next morning. It wasn't just the driver's window that was damaged. The front windshield and back windshield were deeply cracked. I spent some time looking at every car in the garage. No one else had so much as a scratch on their windows. What the hell? If some random asshole was out breaking windows, he was targeting me. I noticed a note after I'd gotten into the car. It was a sticky note folded up and slipped into the ignition keyhole. I opened it. You have to increase your minimum required effort. It said. The phrasing was intentional. David wanted me to know it was him. And when I saw that phrase, I remembered our conversation. That fucker. I went into a total rage and drove out of the parking lot, trying my best to drive with a cracked windshield. I still remember how to get to David's house, and I ran a red light or two to get there, parking in front of his house. I slammed the door shut and marched to the front door. I held the doorbell for much longer than necessary. I tried to breathe and remain calm. David won't help me if I show up shouting and yelling. His mom answered after a few minutes. David's parents had held off on having a child until they were much older. As a result, David's mom was already 75, even though David was only 23. "Hello," she said, opening the door. Then she saw who it was. "Oh, Xander, how nice of you to come over. I haven't seen you in weeks." "Yeah, it's been almost a year," I sighed. "Mrs. K, is David home?" "No, sorry, dear. He's at work right now." "Oh, okay, I'll go and catch him at the theater," I said, backpedaling toward my car. No, he doesn't work there anymore." "He got fired?" I asked. "No, he quit not long after you did. He became a security guard somewhere. He never mentioned where." "I'll call him then." I said. "He dropped his phone a few weeks ago and got a new one," she said. "Let me give you the new number." She walked back inside for a minute, and I waited on the porch. She came back with her old flip phone and opened it. "Do you mind?" she asked. My arthritis makes it hard to use this phone. I went to her contacts, found David's number, entered into mine, and handed the phone back. "Thanks, Mrs. K," I said. Even if David was being an asshole, I had always liked his mom. "Any time," she said with a smile and closed the door. I called David immediately, but only got a voicemail. "Hi, David, it's Xander. I just spoke with your mom, and she didn't know where you were, so she gave me your number. Please call me, man. I think you know why, I said to his voicemail. I figured that being polite was the best way to get him to fix everything. In the middle of work that day, my phone buzzed. Hoping it was David, I stepped outside and answered. It was Clark. Xander, have you been home today since you left? No, why? We've been robbed. What? Someone broke in and stole a ton of stuff. Your computer is missing. Our TV is gone. All kind of shit. Son of a bitch, I said. Did you call the police? Yes, they're on their way. Don't touch anything, okay? I suggested, remembering all the episodes of CSI that I binged on. We might be able to get fingerprints. I think I know who it is. Who? An ex-friend. I'll tell you when I get home. I'm leaving soon. I told the manager that my apartment had been broken into, and he let me go home. I drove home with my still broken windshields, praying I didn't get pulled over for it when I got to the apartment. The police were already there. I walked to the landing where a cop was interviewing Clark, and another was looking through the apartment. The cop turned to face me. Are you one of the roommates? He asked. This is Xander, Clark said. My partner is looking through the apartment now. A tech is going to come out and dust for prints. We're going to need you to make an inventory of everything that was stolen and bring it to the station once the tech is done. I have a suspect, I said. The cop raised his eyebrows. His name is David King. He used to be a really good friend of mine, but recently I've suspected that he's doing all kinds of shit to me. I think he's stolen my identity and my parents' identity, damaged my vehicle, and now broken into my house. Clark shot me a questioning look. Why do you think he's doing all this? The officer asked. I found this in my car's ignition this morning with the windows smashed, I said, handing him the folded sticky note out of my pocket. He read it. Why do you think he wrote this? He asked. We had a conversation about a year ago where we were talking about the minimum requirements for success and how school made our lives easier because it had consequences if we didn't make a minimal effort. I explained. It looked like the idea went right over the cop's head. We'll test this for prints too, was all he said, pulling an evidence bag from his belt and putting the note inside. Come down to the station with your inventory and be ready to make a formal statement about your friend. I agreed to do so. At that moment, the partner came outside with nothing to report. The tech arrived and started dusting. We waited patiently, eager to see what was missing. You really should lock your bedroom doors, the partner said. 2 of your roommates' doors are locked, so I doubt anything was stolen from them. You should make sure they check their rooms for anything that's missing when they get home. We agreed to ask them. The tech finished up and told us we'd know in a few days what prints he was able to find. The house seemed bare. Only the largest couch out of 3 was left in the living room. The TV, which had been a 65-inch plasma, was gone. Food was missing from the pantry, and even the contents of the fridge were dumped on the floor. Silverware was scattered around the kitchen floor and counters. Where the hell is Isaac or Jackson? Clark yelled angrily. They're always home. We should call them, I said. I don't have their numbers, Clark replied. Well, neither do I said, walking to my bedroom. It was stripped bare of anything worthwhile. My computer, mouse, keyboard, computer chair, boxes of random knickknacks. Bicycle were all missing. My dresser drawers were laying everywhere. My closet was clearly raided, and my bed covers had been tossed around the room. I heard bouts of loud cursing from Clark as he inspected his room. He took my goddamn Xbox, that son of a bitch. Feeling shocked, defeated, and numb, I sat on the bed. I called Katie to tell her what had happened. No answer. I shot her a text. My house got robbed, and stared at the wall for a while, thinking. David King had been in my house. He'd stolen my identity, my public image, and now my things. It was time to step up my game. No, not my game. My life. Time to stop floating through life and start beating the minimum required effort. During the rest of that day, we learned a lot about plumbing. David had loosened every pipe he could find in the house. Clark made the discovery when our toilet unleashed a tsunami when he flushed. We spent hours cleaning that up. To fix all the pipes, we had to go out and buy tools because neither of us had any at the house. When my card was declined, Clark stepped in and paid. My declined card worried me. Clark and I went to the library, and I tried to log into my online banking site. Locked out. Shit, I didn't even bother retrying my password. We raced to the bank before they closed, and I breathlessly approached the teller. I need to freeze my account. I breathed. What's your account number? The teller, apparently named Chantel, asked. I told her my account number from memory. She opened it on her computer. Driver's license, please. I handed her my card. She typed my driver's license number into her computer to verify my identity, then handed it back to me. Looks like your account is at 0, she said. You can only freeze the account if there's money. I've been robbed. I shouted, feeling extremely angry now. You moved all of your money to your debit card via our online app, and then withdrew it all in cash from an ATM this afternoon. No, it wasn't me. I said, I've been hacked. If you'd like to report fraudulent transactions, I can fill that out for you right here. Yes, fine, do it, I said abruptly. Clark watched me with worry, a chair by the door. When did you start to notice the fraudulent activity? She asked. Today, but it could have started any time over the last year, I replied. She raised her eyebrows in a way she thought I couldn't see and started typing. After a few minutes, she looked up at me. Okay, I filled out the report and submitted it. You should hear back from our fraud department soon. What about the ATM cameras? I said, I don't have access to those. You'll have to file a police report, she said. Okay, I'll do that. Then Clark and I went back to the car and drove to the apartment. We would have gone to the police department right away, but the apartment was still flooding in places. We spent a few hours finding leaky pipes and tightening them. It took hours because we looked everything up before we did it to be sure we were doing it right. Clark inspecting the pipes under the kitchen sink while I sat at the table and started my inventory for the police. It was already 9 p.m., so we were going to take it in the morning. Our local station wasn't open 24 hours a day. We had knocked on Jackson and Isaac's doors, but got no answer. Either they weren't home, or they were ignoring us. I'm really sorry about all the fraud going on, Clark said as he tightened the pipe. You said you think you know who it is? Who's David King? David used to be a friend about a year ago. I said, I told him about the dares and the conversation that led up to it. You dared each other to ruin each other's lives. And then he took it more than seriously? Clark asked, incredulous. Apparently. I sighed. So you're not going to hold up your end of the deal? Clark said, my end? He dared you first, man. And you haven't even tried. Well, no, I guess not. Then let's think of something to really destroy his life. Clark pulled himself out from under the sink and washed the grease off his hands. Prison would do it, I suggested. If I can nail him for identity theft, that'll solve the problem. True, Clark said, but we need to show him that you aren't going to just lay down and take it. I have an idea. It's not going to ruin his life, but it'll make him realize that you're going to fight back. Clark took me in his car to Home Depot. We bought 2 cans of black spray paint, and Clark paid in cash. Okay, where does this dumbass live? Clark asked when we were back in the car. Clark, his mom is great. I don't think I can spray her house. I replied, his mom? Clark laughed hysterically. Some guy that still lives with his mom is terrorizing you? Okay, Jesus, I said. I gave him the address, and he took off. We drove past the house to see if any lights were on. It was dark. Even the porch lights were off. We parked 3 blocks away from the house and started walking. What's the plan? I uttered, spray thief on the front of the house. Clark whispered with a smile. That ought to get the neighbors talking. When we were next to the neighbor's house, we ducked behind a fence and surveyed the neighborhood. All was quiet. No movement, no noise, no people. We stayed low and silently dashed to the front of the house. I sprayed the F, Clark sprayed the T, and we worked toward each other. It barely took 3 seconds. We stepped back for half a second and examined our handiwork. The letters were 3 feet tall, easily visible from the road. Perfect. We turned and started to run towards the car. Then the door to the house opened. I glanced over my shoulder. David fucking King. Oh shit, I hissed. Clark heard me, and we sprinted full on toward the car. David tore down the sidewalk after us. Clark looked behind as well. "Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God," Clark chanted with each step. He actually looked worried. As we approached the car, Clark had a realization. "Just keep going." He tried to whisper, even though he was out of breath. "I locked the door. It'll take too long to unlock. And he'll know my license plate." Clark didn't have automatic locks. He had to use the key manually. I agreed with his logic, and we ran past the car as if it were just another vehicle. I looked back, and David was gaining on us. It was too dark to see his expression. Hell, I didn't even know if he recognized me. "Split up?" I cried, turning right into someone's front yard. Clark kept going straight. When I reached the white plastic fence that led along the back of the property, I glanced backwards. David had followed me and ignored Clark. I scrambled up the slippery fence and dropped on the other side. I had landed in someone else's backyard. I started running toward their front yard. A motion detecting light on the wall went off, blinding me. I looked behind me again to watch David scale the fence in half a second. When the hell had he learned how to do that? I rounded the corner of the house and smashed right into a patio table and chairs. The chairs clattered down, and the table tipped over while my body folded around it. My heart was pounding as I untangled myself. That's when David grabbed the back of my neck and pushed me down, my face against the edge of the table. Part 3. Hello again, everyone. So many positive replies. Thank you. I haven't smiled in months, and you're definitely all making my days easier. I love how almost every notification is giving me a countdown every couple hours. Remind me 8 hours? Thank you for making me laugh. Seriously, I needed it. I had a close call, and David almost found me today. I caught a bus out of town, which is where I wrote this. Now we continue. Hello, Xander, he growled. Out for a walk? Fuck you. I spat, my cheek jammed against the table edge. Why so hostile? You know why, jackass. Not so loud. We're having a nice, quiet conversation. I struggled to push my head off the table, but he was so much stronger than me. Stop struggling and listen. I want to clarify the rules of the game, since you finally caught on that we're playing. This isn't a game. You ruined my credit, stole my money, hacked my accounts, and stole my shit. I'm going to kill you. But I'm not going to kill you. That's the rule. I will not kill you, Xander. That would put an end to your ruined life. And that's not the goal. Now, you haven't put any effort into ruining MY life. Why not? Because I'm not a sick psychopath. I hissed. Clearly not, he said coolly, but this is boring for me. I'm doing all the work making you fight for life, while you're doing nothing to improve me. Not that I haven't learned anything, but it would be more fun if you fight back. I'll even let Clark help you, but I think you need motivation. You think I need motivation to hurt you? As if, yes, you do need it, because despite everything that's happened to you, your only attempt to fight back was pathetic. I need you to up your game and fight harder. So that's where some motivation kicks in. He reached his left hand into his pants pocket and pulled out a smartphone. He tapped on it a few times before holding it up to his ear. It's me, he said when the other line picked up. Put her on. Then he held the phone to my ear. Someone was crying. Say hello, a gruff voice said. Hello. Katie. Jesus Christ, he'd kidnapped Katie. You motherfucker. I yelled. Easy on the language, Xander. David smiled, talking as if he'd asked me to eat my vegetables. Katie, where are you? I said desperately into the phone. David took the phone away and hung up, sticking it back in his pocket. Do you understand the rules now, Xander? Are you motivated? I'm gonna kill you, you son of a bitch. You'll burn in hell. Now, this is a theological discussion, David tutayed. You and Clark do your best to ruin my life. Do whatever you want. But if you kill me, I kill Katie. Can't kill her if you're dead, I growled. No, but my friend will. It's amazing the kind of people you can meet online. He's just as excited to play as I am. Do you have any questions before the game really starts? What the hell happened to you? I asked. We were best friends. Things change, he said. I've been dreaming of this game for years now. You were my only real friend I could do this with. One day I decided to just go for it. You've ruined your own life by trying to ruin mine. I spat. Once you're convicted of identity theft and kidnapping, your life is over. That's part of the game. Can't ruin me if you can't convict me. I've been preparing for years, he grinned. His eyes were dark and menacing. Don't you think that's unfair to me? How am I supposed to put in a good effort if you've been preparing for years? I'll consider giving you some advice, he admitted, looking thoughtful. In the meantime, do your best. And tell Clark to play along, because I'll have some motivation for him too. The sound of scrambling on the back fence alerted us to someone's presence. I shouted for help, and David slapped me, but lightly. I tried to see who it was from my limited movement. Clark's face appeared over the fence. That's my cue to leave, David said with a smile. It's been good catching up with you, Xander. Clark shot across the yard, yelling for David to piss off. David just stood there, looking at me and waiting. That's when Clark caught up and punched him square in the face. David flew to the ground, releasing my head. I stood up and rubbed my sore face. David started to get up, but Clark kicked him in the side. Stay down, he shouted. A light went on in the house behind us. We both turned to look. I had the thought to hold David here until the police arrived. When we turned back around, David was halfway down the street. Clark started to take off, but I grabbed his arm. Stop, let him go, I said in defeat. I have something to tell you. We made a quiet decision to avoid the cops tonight. We wanted to file a report with them on our terms, not having to explain what we were doing trespassing in the middle of the night. We jogged back to his car and went home. We sat on the living room couch as I told Clark about David's conversation. Clark was staring dumbfounded at me. I thought you said he used to be a friend? He said, he did. And he never acted like this? No, not to me. This is insane, Clark said, standing from the couch. He's kidnapped Katie just so you'll try to ruin his life and follow along with some stupid dare? Is he crazy? He's going to be caught. Let's hope so, I said, but we should start planning. I'm not taking any chances while he is Katie. Okay, man, I want nothing to do with this at all, but I also want to help you. If it was anyone else, I'd nope the fuck out. Then let's get started. I said, I don't know how much detail I want to put here, because it'll likely get slow and boring for you. We stayed up all night long mapping out events, people, weaknesses, strengths, everything we could think of. We filled half a notebook with all our notes. These were the weaknesses we could come up with that we could potentially use against David. Boredom of life. So we could make the game too boring to continue. His mom, if she knew what was going on, she might be able to get him to stop. I know some of you commented that we should kidnap Mrs. K and use her, but we were still very green and had no desire to do the kind of shit David was using. Work. Get him fired, and make sure no one would hire him again. Online accounts. Do the same things to him that he'd done to me. Police. If we could come up with hard evidence to get him convicted, the problem would be solved. Katie. Since he had kidnapped Katie, the police would definitely get involved. I could easily report my suspicions about David, and they'd search him for the tiniest evidence. Then we looked at his strengths and things to look out for. Prepared. He obviously had a timeline he was following and knew what he was doing. Time, the junk mail and credit fraud incidents, had all began long before I felt the effects. This meant that there could be other traps David had set up that would go off like a time bomb sometime in the future. Physical body. It was clear from tonight that he'd been working out a ton and practicing, possibly training for his job as a security guard. Money. He had a lot of money now from what he stole from me and used fraud to receive. Friends. If he made a friend who was willing to get involved in a kidnapping, then there were 2 or possibly more psychopaths to worry about now. Knowledge. He knew how to use fraud without being caught, yet, and hack computers or at least hire someone to do it for him. We had no idea what other dangerous knowledge he might have, so we made a list of things he could know that we should learn how to counter. I won't list it here, because it was pretty long. Willingness to break the law. It was clear that the law was not part of the rules of the game for him. He was either unafraid to be caught, or confident that he never would be. After we looked at David, we looked at ourselves. First, our weaknesses. Knowledge. We didn't have nearly the amount of knowledge David had. Not just knowledge about how to do things like fix a pipe, but also knowledge about David, who his friends were, where he worked, who he talked to, etc. We'd have to start learning like crazy to try and catch up. Money. I had no money left. Clark was limited because he'd just spent a ton on that plasma TV that was just stolen. Home and car. David knew where we lived. We planned to sell our lease ASAP. He also knew our cars. But there was nothing we could do about that until we moved and had some money to buy a junker car we could use when necessary. No matter where we moved, if he could find our car, he could follow us home. Katie, if David decided to change the rules and use Katie as motivation, we might have to rethink everything. Fear. Clark and I knew that deep down David terrified us more than he angered us. I would have rather walked away than exact revenge. We were also afraid and unwilling to do a lot of things David had already done. These were our strengths. Law. The law was on our side, so long as we kept things legal. Clark's credit. So far, David hadn't targeted Clark like he'd targeted me, so we could take precautionary measures to protect him. Jobs. We had jobs and could therefore earn more money, unless David found a way to get us fired from them. We needed to come up with a way to protect our jobs from David. FTC, police force, government, these government bodies with all their vast resources were working for us on my identity theft. We thought it was likely that they'd be able to link David to my identity theft. Looking at all the strengths and weaknesses of both parties side by side, it looked like an even matchup on paper. But just thinking about trying to fight David made us feel like we were up against an impossible enemy. We sat down to eat breakfast and continued talking over what we would do. Both of us called in sick to work, so we could start preparing. All right, I posted our leases up for sale on Craigslist. I said, putting my phone down. Clark was sniffing the air with a confused expression. He leaned over and smelled the cereal. Does it smell bad to you? He asked. I sniffed. Smells like cereal to me. I said, smells bad to me. He dumped the cereal in the sink. Clark pulled out his phone and called Equifax, letting them know that he wanted a freeze on his credit for 90 days. When those 90 days were up, he would call again and again until this matter was resolved to protect his credit. His credit card with a $3,000 limit was still accessible to us, but no new credit could be applied for. He then went on every account he had online and changed every password to be random gibberish. He signed up for an online password manager and put his passwords in there. The password manager worked by only storing an encrypted file on their server. He would download his encrypted file from the password manager website, read or write to the file, re-encrypt it, and then send it back to the server. The server only held the encrypted file, no passwords. Even if this company got hacked, the hackers would only have a bunch of useless, encrypted files. They could crack the files with time, sure, but it was the best we could do. The only account he didn't put into the password manager was his bank account information. He wrote down half of the username on one small scrap of paper and the other half on another. He did the same with the password. He intended to hide them in safe places around town. If David got a hold of Clark's bank information, we were dead in the water. While he did that, I finished both of our inventories to hand over to the police as soon as they opened for the day. Once the station opened, we were going to head over, hand in our inventories, file a police report for the burglary, and recommend David as a possible suspect. I also planned to point them to my identity theft police report and state that I suspected David to be guilty of that as well. Once we had the police report, we would go to our landlord and request for the locks to be changed, using the police report as evidence of the break-in. The tech had told us that the door had been opened regularly and not forced. That meant David had somehow made a copy of our key. As it got close to 9 a.m., we got into Clark's car and drove around town. He got out at 4 locations and hid his scraps of paper somewhere. He knew it had to be somewhere people didn't touch for months at a time and wouldn't be damaged or moved by sprinklers, storms, etc. I don't know where he hid them, but he assured me they were safe. After they were hidden, we drove to the police station to file our report. We waited patiently for an officer to see us. Once we were called over, we took a seat and told him about the break-in and that a police report had been started, and we were now turning in an inventory of our stolen things. We have a suspect for the burglary. I said at last. Okay, who? He asked. His name is David King. He used to be a friend of mine, but not anymore. What happened? He asked. writing the name down. Recently, I had my identity stolen, I said. I suspect he was also behind that. So if he stole my identity, it's likely that he broke in too. He hates me. Okay, but what actually happened that made you not be friends anymore? I hesitated. I didn't know how to explain the situation. If anyone can think of a better way to explain the situation to a cop, let me know. I only said, we had a major fight, and he threatened to ruin my life. When was this fight? About a year ago. And you think he's just now stealing your identity and breaking into your home? The cop said dubiously. Were you friends with him? He asked, gesturing to Clark. No, I'm his roommate, he replied, pointing to me. Okay, boys, the officer side, scooting forward. Thank you for the tip and your inventories. We'll investigate this just like any other crime and give it our best effort. Can I get copies of your driver's licenses and phone numbers so I can contact you if I have questions? We handed him our licenses and wrote down our phone numbers in the file. I'll be right back, he said, taking the licenses to make copies. We looked at each other for a minute, taking a deep breath. He doesn't believe us, I said in resignation. We'll find evidence, he encouraged me. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Then the officer came back, 2 others at his side. Clark Ulysses? He asked. Yes. Clark said, confused. You're under arrest for vandalism and trespassing on private property. The officers flanked him and pulled him to his feet. I stared at the cops in bewilderment. Clark's eyes were wide. When I went to copy your license, the cop said, holding up, I checked it against our records. Last night, someone called in a report that you'd been to their home and sprayed thief on their house, and then attacked him when he came out to stop you. My mouth dropped open. Son of a bitch. David King, the one you just recommended as a suspect, was the one who called it in. Seems to me like you're trying to discredit him before he reported you. Guess he beat you to it. Read him his rights, he said to the other officers. Wait, I said, standing up? Hold on, I was there too. It wasn't just him. Clark shook his head at me ever so slightly. No, I wasn't going to let him take the fall for this. Mr. King explicitly stated that there was only one vandal, and that he watched Mr. Ulysses sneak up to the house and spray it by himself. I know you're trying to protect your friend, but don't throw your life away, kid. One of the officers started reading Clark his Miranda rights while they cuffed him and walked him toward the door, leading to inmate processing. Call my mom for bail. I'll be out soon. Clark shouted behind him. Don't let him win. Hi, everyone. I've been exploring today. New city, new layouts to learn. I'm getting good at memorizing cities. Thank you all for your support and suggestions. Once again, these are all past events. But I am taking your ideas into consideration for how to fight back here in the present. A few of you have offered help in other ways, and I appreciate the offers, but this is my fight. I've ruined so many other lives by involving other people. No, David is mine to ruin, even if I die trying. Also, I've looked back over it and realized I forgot something, but now I've forgotten what it was. So forgive me if I make correction in the next part. Another thing, I try to talk to as many people as I can in the comments unless my reply will have contained spoilers. But live events have forced me to limit that interaction because of time and the sheer number of you. Forgive me. Now I'll continue. I called Clark's mom right away. I had their home phone number because last Christmas, Clark invited me to his house for Christmas dinner since my parents and I were still fighting pretty harshly. He'd already gone home while I had to work. So he gave me the phone number in case I got lost, and he didn't answer his cell. She was devastated and asked me a million questions. It was very, very uncomfortable. She agreed to drive down that day and post bail for him. She lived a few hours away, so she said she'd be here at around 5 p.m. The county we were in didn't allow online payments via credit card, cash only, so she had to physically drive down. In the middle of the phone call, I missed a call from a number that wasn't in my contacts. I called back, and they answered immediately. Hi, I missed a call from this number. Hi, is it Xander? Yeah, who's this? Xander, I'm Katie's mom. Your parents gave me your number. Shit, hi. Can't talk now, I'm in a rush and She cut me off. Have you heard from Katie? She didn't come home last night. Your mom gave me your number. Please tell me she's with you. She's not, I said. I'm not sure where she is. I have to go, I'll call you back. I hung up the phone. I didn't want to talk to her about Katie, because I was about to file her missing person report. I walked over to the reception desk. I was just talking to an officer, and then he arrested my friend and walked off. I need to talk to the officer on my other case about identity fraud. What case number? The lady asked. A while later, I was sitting in one of their interrogation rooms after asking for a private meeting. Detective Hernandez sat at the opposite end of a metal table. My 2 case files were on the table in front of him. He was glancing through them, trying to familiarize himself with the break-in report. A tape recorder sat between us. He pressed a button on the recorder, and the tape started rolling. He stated his name, my case numbers, the date, and the time. All right, go ahead, he said. So, I submitted a report for identity theft a while ago and haven't heard anything about it. The FTC can take some time to respond, he replied. Well, now there's a new report for a break-in at my apartment. I was talking to another officer earlier and told him that I have a suspect for both crimes. Yes, the detective said, looking over one of the folders. He had both cases on the table. One David King, correct? Looks like it was written in your file. Yes, David King. He used to be a friend of mine, but now he hates me and has been targeting me. Targeting you how? Most recently, he's kidnapped my girlfriend, Katie. That caught his attention. He pulled a pen from his front pocket. When was this? He asked, said his pen on a blank page. Last night, when we went to go graffiti his house. He chased after us and pinned me to a table. He called someone on the phone and had them put Katie on the phone. I heard her voice and he claimed he'd kidnapped her to motivate me. Motivate you to do what? Hernandez asked. I told him about the DARE conversation, then about all the junk mail, my online accounts, the credit card fraud, my parents' credit being targeted, my car's windows, the break-in, my bank account being emptied, the graffiti incident, Katie's phone call, protecting Clark's bank and online accounts, and now Clark's arrest. Hernandez took copious notes. It just keeps escalating, I said in defeat. I watched Hernandez carefully, trying to gauge his reaction. I couldn't tell what he believed. I need more details about the phone call, he said at last. What did she say? What did you say? What did you hear on the other end? We talked through everything for an hour. Nothing I said was useful for finding Katie, but Hernandez sat back after I finished. Xander, I have to be honest. This all sounds very loose. I don't mean the crimes themselves. I mean the connections linking David to all of these crimes. There's nothing that can be done about the identity theft until the FTC has finished their investigation. The break-in, broken windows, hacked accounts, and emptied bank account will have produced their own evidence to prove that David committed each one. To you, this is all one timeline of events. But to the law, they are separate crimes that have to be treated with no regard for past actions, he said. His tone was reasonable and concerned. I believe you, but I can't make an arrest without witnesses or hard evidence. Your story is circumstantial at best, but I do believe you when you say they are connected. Finally, someone believes me. What have the techs said about the break-in? I asked. They said they found a few fingerprints. All the fingerprints found belong to each of you, and a few other people who used to live there. According to file, they've all been confirmed as past residents. And what about the ATM camera? Now, that's something unfortunate, he said, looking through the folder again. We got a call from your bank to file a fraud report. It was smart of you to go through the bank to report the fraud. My boss made a priority, and since it was your same name, it was added to our file on your identity theft. I've been the one personally working on your identity theft case. Once I received the case, I called the convenience store that the ATM was in. They gave me the brand of the ATM, so I could request the footage from the company. Problem is, that ATM doesn't have a camera. What? How can an ATM not have a camera? Not all brands do. Some ATMs don't have cameras built in, and this was one of them. Someone logged into your online bank account right before the ATM transaction and moved all of your money from savings into your checking account. They also increased your ATM withdrawal limit to $5,000 while online, which was above the $3,500 you had in your account. Normally, you can only withdraw $500 per day. What about the store's cameras? I practically shouted. I asked for them to bring the footage down. They said they'll be in today. He said, "Where's the store?" I asked. "I want to see this for myself." "No," he said firmly. "I may have inclination to lean towards your theory, but I will collect the evidence myself and a court will decide. You steer clear. Then drive down yourself right now, God damn it." I yelled. He stood slightly, his hand reaching for his belt automatically. "Calm down," he said. "Look at me in the eyes. I have no money." I shouted. "My car windows are smashed and I can't repair them. My rent will be due and I'll have no way to pay. Because he's dead set on ruining my life." I muttered, "That's the dare. He's taken it too far. Further than any sane person would. He's sick. I just want to stop," I said. I cried a little, and Hernandez let me sit in silence for a minute with tears rolling down my cheeks. "What about Katie?" I asked after a while. "The kidnapping is going to get top priority. That's the one case that has a witness you. I won't be working on it, but someone in a different section of the department will be. The other detective will want to interview you today and get started." "Let's do it then," I said, wiping my eyes. Hernandez stepped out and returned a while later with a detective. Detective White came in and probed me with hundreds of questions. Where did she work? Who were her friends? How long had we been together? When did I last see her? Do her parents know? Questions like that. When I brought up David in the phone call, he leaned in and asked me the same questions about what I'd heard, what we'd said, and anything I could remember. Again, I didn't remember anything helpful. "I'll need to bring David in for questioning," Detective White said. "Your testimony is decent, but we'll need more evidence for conviction. I can't arrest him because I need more proof. If we arrest him without enough proof, he'll walk free and can't be tried again." "You had enough proof to arrest Clark." I shouted. "Clark?" Detective White asked. "I was just talking with an officer who said David called in and told you all that Clark graffitied his house. All he had to do was call and he got arrested." Detective White excused himself to go find out more about what happened. He came back 5 minutes later. "David has more proof on that case," Detective said. "Photographs of the graffiti, photographs of Clark coming up to the house, his own testimony about recognizing Clark, and a bruised face. Clark's hand is also cut up, which corroborates his story. We noticed it when we booked him. This is the kind of evidence we need to convict in a kidnapping. Right now we have your testimony stating you said hello to Katie on the phone, and that David said he'd kidnapped her. We need more evidence to convince a jury." "But I was with Clark." I yelled. "In the pictures you weren't," he said. "Then they're fakes. An expert will check them and determine that." I sat back in my chair, feeling defeated. Detective White thanked me for my testimony and left to contact Katie's parents. Detective Hernandez sat back down, watching me as tears welled up in my eyes again. "Let me pay for your windows," he said. "It won't matter. He'll break them again the next day." I said angrily, "He's broken them more than once. Every time I repair them, they're smashed again the next day." "I might have an idea," he said, "but I'll need approval from my boss." If you haven't heard of entrapment in the context of a police investigation, it's a legal defense that's used when evidence can be shown that an officer induces a criminal to commit a crime they wouldn't otherwise commit. When this defense is used, there are two differing views. In some courts, if a defendant uses entrapment as a defense, the prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the criminal was not entrapped. In other courts, the defense has to prove that it was entrapped. The state I was in required the prosecution to do the proving. Hernandez recognized that his plan could be construed as entrapment, and he explained this to me as we walked to his boss's office. He told me that since David had already established a pattern of breaking my windows, Hernandez could set up surveillance on the car and just wait for David to commit the crime he was going to do anyway. Since I had repaired my windows twice, and had kept the receipts, that would serve as good evidence that the crime had been repetitive. The idea made me hopeful. I sat outside his boss's office while he walked in and presented his idea. When he walked out, he gave me a thumbs up. David would never know what hit him. Hernandez drove me to my house where I picked up my car and took it to a repair shop. He followed me over there and paid. We drove to my work in Hernandez's car while they worked on it. Hernandez ordered us some lunch, and I talked to my boss. I told him about my bank account getting hacked and that I needed to cancel direct deposit. Luckily, payroll was next week, so they'd be able to change the method of payment by the next paycheck. I told him about my situation, and Hernandez backed me up. He agreed to pay some of my wages in advance out of the store's petty cash until payday came, and I was to pay him back. I thanked him profusely for helping me out and apologized for having to call in sick that day. I walked out with a full stomach, $335, and a calm mind. With any luck, we'd catch David tonight. Hernandez took me back to the shop, and I picked up my car. I tried to pay for the money I'd received, but he refused, saying I could pay him back after this was all resolved. He told me he'd be at my house later on to start the surveillance and to just park my car on the street. I thanked him again before we parted. It was about 3 p.m. when I got home. I parked my car several blocks away and next to several others for camouflage. I didn't want David to find it and smashed the windows before tonight. The walk was hot and cool air conditioning welcomed me into my house. "Excuse me?" Someone asked timidly as I unlocked my front door. I peeked my head back outside. There was an older woman on the landing, probably in her 40s. "Yes." I replied, "You live in that apartment, I'm guessing?" She said, "Yeah, I'm Mrs. Watson. I believe you and my son are roommates." Oh, hello," I said, extending my hand. "Whose mom are you?" "Isaac," she replied. "He and I were supposed to be driving out of state to visit family yesterday, but he never showed up." A chill ran up my spine. "I've called him 1,000 times, but he hasn't answered," she continued. "I've been standing here ringing the doorbell for a while, but no one has been home. Can I go knock on his door?" I considered asking her to leave or telling her that I wasn't comfortable with her coming in, but I knew that would have been suspicious. I knew what we were going to find. I told her to come in, and instantly the smell overtook us. She tried to be polite and not offend me, probably thinking we were typical college guys living like pigs. She walked down the hall to Isaac's room. "Oh, God," she muttered. The smell must have been horrific right by the door. I shuddered, but went down the hall towards her. She knocked. "Isaac," she called. No answer, as I expected. "Isaac, it's Mom," she said. I think the smell made her start to panic because she pounded harder on the door. "Isaac, open up, please," she pleaded desperately. I sighed, gently. I guided her away from the door and braced myself. I took a running start and slammed into the door. It bent heavily, but the latch didn't break. I tried again and again. On the 4th try, the door wrenched open and I was inside. The smell, oh God, I don't know how many times I can tell you about it until you understand. This was one of those moments where I'll remember every detail forever. Isaac's room was a mess. There were 3 bookshelves that likely used to have tons of books, but the shelves were torn apart and books scattered across the room. His computer desk had paper scattered across it and cups knocked over. The window was darkened by a blackout curtain used for gaming.